My name is Lauren, 28 years old, and I was once the only daughter of a wealthy family in Boston. From our seven-bedroom mansion to luxury cars, I had it all. Or so it seemed. Until one night when my parents called me a burden and refused to pay for my college education. It was the night I discovered what abandonment truly means. Today, my design studio serves Fortune 500 companies. Let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button to follow my journey from betrayal to unexpected triumph. I grew up in Beacon Hill, one of Boston's most exclusive neighborhoods. Our home was a three-story Victorian mansion with 7 bedrooms each with its own bathroom, a swimming pool in the backyard, and a four-car garage housing a collection of luxury vehicles my father William rotated depending on his mood. As the chief executive officer of a major financial firm, he never missed an opportunity to remind me how hard he worked for our lifestyle. My mother, Margaret, was a renowned plastic surgeon catering to Boston's elite, with a client list that included celebrities and socialites. From the outside, we looked like the perfect family. People envied our wealth, our status, our seemingly perfect life. But inside those beautifully decorated walls, our home felt cold and empty, devoid of the warmth that actually makes a house a home. My father was a tall, imposing man with salt and pepper hair, always impeccably styled, his suits custom-made in Italy, his shoes handcrafted in London. He rarely smiled, and when he did, it never quite reached his eyes. From my earliest memories, he viewed me as an investment rather than a daughter. My academic achievements, extracurricular activities, even my appearance were all measured against his expectations. Nothing was ever good enough. An A- was a disappointment. Second place in a competition was failure. Lauren mediocrity is not an option for a Patterson. He would say, his voice never rising, but somehow cutting deeper than if he had shouted. Excellence is expected, not celebrated. My mother was equally distant, though in a different way. Beautiful in that cold, perfect way that comes from her own surgical enhancements, she was rarely home between her bustling practice and social obligations. When she was present, she was constantly critiquing my appearance. "Stand up straight, Lauren. No one respects a woman with poor posture. That outfit does nothing for your figure. You need to be more conscious of your presentation. Your hair looks unkempt. First impressions matter in this world." The person who showed me real affection was our housekeeper, Maria. A warm, round woman with gentle hands and a soft voice. She had worked for my family since before I was born. Maria was the one who packed my lunches with little notes inside. She was the one who attended my school performances. She was the one who held me when I cried after my father's cutting remarks or my mother's dismissive glances. "Mi niña," she would whisper, stroking my hair. "You are worth so much more than you know." I remember my 10th birthday vividly. My parents had promised to be home early for a special dinner. I had spent hours getting ready wearing the new dress my mother had bought me, styling my hair the way she liked it. Maria had prepared my favorite meal and baked a beautiful cake. 6 o'clock came and went, then 7, then 8. At 9:30, the phone rang. It was my father's assistant informing us that both my parents had been caught up in important meetings and would not make it home. Maria found me sitting alone at the elaborately decorated dining table, tears silently streaming down my face. "Come, mi niña," she said, sitting beside me and cutting a large slice of cake. "We will have our own party, yes, and it will be better because there is more cake for us." That night, as Maria tucked me in, I asked her a question that had been burning in my mind. "Maria, why don't my parents love me?" Her eyes filled with tears as she cupped my face in her warm hands. "They do love you, Lauren. They just do not know how to show it. Some people are not good at loving out loud. But I love you enough for everyone, okay?" As I grew older, I came to understand that my parents viewed me primarily as an extension of themselves, a vehicle for their ambitions and status. My accomplishments reflected well on them. My failures were unacceptable blemishes on their perfect image. One evening when I was 12, I overheard them talking in my father's study. I had come downstairs for a glass of water and paused outside the partially open door when I heard my name. "The investments in Lauren's education are substantial." My father was saying, swirling a glass of scotch. But necessary. Harvard expects legacy students to be exceptional. William, do you sometimes wonder if we're doing too much? My mother asked, her voice slightly slurred from wine. The pressure might be counterproductive. My father scoffed. Pressure creates diamonds, Margaret. Besides, this is our obligation. Once she graduates and secures a suitable position in marriage, our duty will be fulfilled. I stood frozen outside that door, the realization washing over me that to my parents, I was not a child to be loved, but an obligation to be fulfilled, a duty, an investment expected to yield returns. That night I cried myself to sleep clutching the stuffed bear Maria had given me years ago. It was the first time I truly understood that the wealth surrounding me came at the cost of something far more valuable, unconditional love. The worst part was that despite this knowledge, I continued to strive for their approval. Every test, every competition, every social event became another opportunity to finally earn the love that should have been freely given. I was caught in a cycle of seeking validation from the two people least capable of providing it. As I entered my teenage years, the emotional distance only grew. My parents were physically present in the house more often as I got older, but emotionally, they might as well have been on another planet. The family dinners we occasionally had were formal affairs, where conversation revolved around my academic performance or my father's business achievements. Never feelings, never dreams, never the things that actually mattered. The mansion I grew up in had 6,000 square feet of space, but I had never felt more confined, more alone, more invisible than I did within those elegant walls. By 16, I had molded myself into the perfect daughter, at least on paper. Straight A, plus student captain of the volleyball team, volunteer at the local hospital every weekend. My schedule was packed from dawn until well after sunset, a constant race to achieve more, prove myself worthy of the Patterson name, and perhaps finally worthy of my parents' love. Despite all this, the emotional gap between us only widened as I developed my own perspectives and occasionally dared to voice them. The first major conflict erupted when I questioned my father's position on a political issue during a dinner with his colleagues. "Lauren," he said later that night, his voice dangerously quiet, "you will never again contradict me in public. Your half-formed opinions reflect poorly on this family." "But Dad, I researched this topic for a school project. The statistics clearly show." "Enough." For the first time, he raised his voice. "You are 16 years old. You know nothing of the real world. Your job is to learn, not to teach." My mother has always sided with him. "Really, Lauren, such behavior is unbecoming. We raised you better than that." It was around this time that I became close friends with Amanda Reynolds. Unlike my family, the Reynolds lived in a modest 3-bedroom home in a middle-class neighborhood. Amanda's father was a high school teacher, her mother a nurse. What they lacked in material wealth, they more than made up for in warmth and genuine affection. The first time I went to Amanda's house for dinner, I was shocked by what I saw. Her parents asked questions and actually listened to the answers. They laughed easily and touched each other affectionately. When Amanda's younger brother knocked over his glass of milk, no one yelled or gave disapproving looks. Her father simply helped clean up the mess, tousled the boy's hair, and said accidents happen. After that, I spent as much time at Amanda's house as possible. Her parents welcomed me with open arms, never making me feel like an intruder. Mr. Reynolds would help us with our homework, patiently explaining concepts until we understood. Mrs. Reynolds always made sure I stayed for dinner, claiming she always made too much food anyway. One night, as Amanda and I worked on a school project in her room, she asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Lauren, why do you never invite me to your house? I mean, I know it's probably super fancy and all, but still. I'm curious." I stared at my textbook, unable to meet her eyes. How could I explain that I was ashamed? Not of our wealth, but of the coldness that permeated every corner of that mansion. How could I tell her that her small, cluttered home felt more like a real home than mine ever had? "It's just my parents are really strict about guests," I finally said. "Maybe someday." It was during my junior year that I discovered my passion for graphic design. Our school had recently upgraded the computer lab with new design software, and our art teacher, Ms. Winters, encouraged me to try it. From the moment I created my first proper design, I was hooked. The way colors, shapes, typography, and images could come together to communicate ideas fascinated me. For the first time, I felt genuine excitement about something. Not because it would look good on a college application or please my parents, but because it lit something up inside me. I started staying after school to work on projects, watching tutorials online, reading design books. When I tentatively mentioned my new interest to my parents, their reaction was immediate and dismissive. Design. My father practically spat the word. That's a hobby, Lauren, not a career path. Darling, my mother added, her tone falsely sweet. Creative fields are so unstable. And frankly, they're for people who lack the aptitude for serious academic pursuits. And despite their disapproval, I continued exploring design in whatever spare time I could find between all my approved activities. Ms. Winters recognized my talent and encouraged me to enter a local design competition. Working secretly at school and at Amanda's house, I created a campaign for environmental awareness that combined typography and digital illustration. When I won first place, Ms. Winters called my parents to share the good news. They promised to attend the award ceremony. I wasn't surprised when they didn't show up, but it still hurt. Amanda's parents came instead, cheering loudly when my name was called. Mrs. Reynolds even brought flowers. That night, I overheard another conversation between my parents that would further crack my already fragile heart. "She's becoming difficult, William," my mother was saying. "This art nonsense is just the latest example." I agree. She's not turning out quite as we expected. Perhaps we were too lenient. My father would never have tolerated such deviations from the plan. What should we do? Nothing drastic yet. She's still on track for an Ivy League school. We'll just need to be more firm about her future choices. The final blow that year came when Maria was suddenly fired. I came home from school to find her packing her few belongings, tears in her eyes. "Maria, what happened? What's going on?" She pulled me into a tight hug. "Oh, mi niña, your parents, they think I am too." "How did they say it? Too involved with you. They say I undermine their authority." I was devastated. Maria had been my emotional anchor for as long as I could remember. Without her, the mansion would be completely devoid of love. "You can't go," I sobbed into her shoulder. "I need you." She held me at arm's length, wiping tears from my cheeks. "Listen to me, Lauren. You are stronger than you know. And one day you will build a life filled with love and warmth. Promise me you will not let them dim your light." After Maria left, my parents hired a new housekeeper, a stern woman named Mrs. Griffith, who addressed me as Miss Patterson and maintained a strictly professional distance. The house, already cold, became a frozen mausoleum of wealth without warmth. In an act of quiet rebellion, I secured a part-time position at a local design studio, telling my parents it was an academic internship. The owner, a young designer named James, recognized my raw talent and took me under his wing, teaching me skills that went far beyond what I could learn in school. For 4 hours every Saturday, I entered a world where creativity was valued, where my ideas were heard, where I felt a sense of belonging I'd never experienced at home. "You've got a natural eye for this, Lauren," James told me after I helped redesign a client's logo. "Have you thought about studying design in college?" I had. In fact, I'd begun researching art and design schools, collecting brochures and hiding them between my mattress and box spring. Schools where I could nurture this passion that had become my secret joy, my escape from the suffocating expectations of my parents. But every time I imagined telling my parents about these dreams, I heard my father's dismissive voice. "Design is not a career, Lauren. It's a hobby for those who lack real ambition." So I kept my dreams hidden like contraband, knowing the storm that would erupt when I finally gathered the courage to speak them aloud. My senior year of high school arrived with mounting pressure about college applications. My father had a spreadsheet of acceptable institutions, all Ivy League or equivalent prestigious universities. Business, law, medicine, or finance were the only acceptable majors. My future had been mapped out before I was even born, a path constructed without any input from the person who would have to walk it me. I excelled on my SATs, scoring in the 99th percentile. My grade point average was a perfect 4.0. I was accepted into all 7 of the schools my parents had approved, including Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. But alongside those applications, I had secretly applied to the Rhode Island School of Design, one of the most prestigious art schools in the country. When the acceptance letter from RISD arrived, including a partial merit scholarship, I felt a mixture of elation and terror. For days, I carried the letter with me, trying to gather the courage to show my parents. Amanda encouraged me to follow my heart. "Lauren, this is your life," she said, as we sat in her backyard, the acceptance letter between us on the picnic table. "Not theirs. You're the one who has to live it." "You don't understand," I whispered. "This isn't just about college. This is about everything. My whole relationship with them." "Maybe that relationship needs to change," she said gently. "Maybe it's time they see the real you, not the version they created." That night, I decided to tell them. I waited until after dinner when my father was having his usual glass of scotch in his study, and my mother was reviewing patient files in the adjoining sitting room. My hands trembled as I knocked on the open door. "Father, Mother, I need to talk to you about college." My father glanced up, annoyed at the interruption. "What about it?" "The Harvard acceptance is a foregone conclusion. Your grandfather was an alumni, as was I." "Actually," I said, my voice barely audible, "I've been accepted to the Rhode Island School of Design, with a scholarship. I want to study graphic design." The silence that followed was deafening. My father slowly put down his glass, his face hardening into a mask of disbelief and anger. "You did what?" "I applied to RISD. It's one of the best design schools in the country. And I got in." My mother closed her laptop, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the aluminum. "Lauren, this is absurd. We've discussed your future many times. Art school was never part of the plan." "It's my future," I said, my voice growing stronger. "And design isn't just art, it's communication problem solving, it's—" "Enough." My father stood up, his tall frame imposing. "I will not finance this foolishness. 4 years wasted on drawing pictures? Absolutely not." "I have a scholarship," I countered, "and I can work part-time." "A scholarship?" He laughed, a cruel sound devoid of humor. "And how much does that cover? 20%, 30? Who do you think will pay the rest? Design won't pay your bills, Lauren. It won't give you security or status." "It will give me happiness," I whispered. "Happiness?" My mother scoffed. "Happiness doesn't put food on the table. We raised you to be practical, not to chase childish fantasies." What happened next changed the course of my life forever. My father walked to his desk and sat down heavily in his leather chair. "Lauren, you have been nothing but a burden since the day you arrived in this house. We have given you everything, the best schools, the best opportunities, the best advantages. And this is how you repay us, with disobedience and ingratitude." His words hit me like physical blows. "A burden since I arrived." "What do you mean, since I arrived?" I asked, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. My parents exchanged a look I couldn't interpret. My mother sighed, setting down her wineglass. "William, she was bound to find out eventually." "Find out what?" My voice was rising now, panic edging in. "You're adopted, Lauren," my mother said matter-of-factly, as if commenting on the weather. "We took you in when you were 6 months old. We've done our duty, provided for you, given you every advantage, but we are not obligated to fund poor decisions." The room seemed to spin around me. Adopted. All these years, and they had never told me. Every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone of my life had been lived in a lie. "Who are my real parents?" I managed to ask through the shock. "That's irrelevant," my father dismissed. "What matters now is that you understand your position. If you insist on this design school nonsense, you will do so without our financial support. Furthermore, once you turn 18, you will need to find your own living arrangements." "You're kicking me out?" The words felt foreign in my mouth. "We're encouraging independence," my mother corrected, her tone clinical. "If you're adult enough to make your own decisions contrary to our guidance, you're adult enough to face the consequences." I stood there, tears streaming down my face, my entire world collapsing. Not only was I losing my family and home, but I was also losing my very identity. Everything I thought I knew about myself had been a carefully maintained fiction. "Why didn't you tell me I was adopted?" I asked, my voice breaking. "We didn't see the relevance," my father replied coldly. "You were given our name, our resources, our reputation. Your origins were immaterial." That night, I lay in my bed sobbing until no more tears would come. The truth crashed over me in waves. I wasn't who I thought I was. The people I had desperately tried to please for 18 years weren't even my real parents. And now they were casting me aside because I dared to have my own dreams. In the morning, I approached my parents at breakfast, my eyes swollen, but my resolve firm. "I'll be attending RISD in the fall," I told them. "And I understand that means I'll be on my own financially." My father nodded curtly without looking up from his newspaper. "You have until graduation to make arrangements. We'll allow you to remain here until then, provided you maintain your grades and fulfill your existing commitments." The following months were a special kind of hell. My parents barely acknowledged my existence beyond necessary communication. I became a ghost in my own home, invisible, except when my presence was required for maintaining appearances. At school events, they played the role of proud parents perfectly, but the moment we were alone, the facade dropped. I spent those months making preparations. I applied for additional scholarships and financial aid. I increased my hours at the design studio. I researched affordable housing options near RISD. Amanda offered to be my roommate as she had been accepted to Brown University, which was close to RISD. On graduation day, I scanned the audience as I walked across the stage to receive my diploma. My parents' seats were empty. They had sent a text that morning saying an important business meeting had come up. I wasn't surprised, but the pain was still acute. In the audience, however, I spotted Amanda's family cheering loudly. After the ceremony, Mrs. Reynolds hugged me tightly. "We are so proud of you, Lauren," she said, her eyes shining with genuine affection. So very proud. In that moment, surrounded by my friend's family, who had shown me more love as an outsider than my own parents ever had, I made a silent vow I would build a life filled with authentic connections and genuine love. I would create the family I deserved, even if I had to start from scratch. The day I left my parents' house was bright and warm, a beautiful June morning that seemed to mock the heaviness in my heart. I had packed everything I could fit into 3 suitcases: clothes, books, my laptop, and a few precious mementos, including a small photo of Maria and me that I had kept hidden in my desk drawer. The rest of my belongings, my parents informed me, would be donated or disposed of. There were no tearful goodbyes, no last-minute reconciliations. My father was at work, and my mother merely glanced up from her magazine as I stood at the door of the sitting room. "I'm leaving now," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I see," she replied, turning a page. "Good luck with your artistic pursuits." That was it. 18 years reduced to a dismissive farewell. I walked out of that mansion knowing I would likely never return, a strange mixture of grief and liberation washing over me. Amanda and her parents helped me move into the small 2-bedroom apartment we had found in Providence. It was on the 3rd floor of an old building without an elevator. The paint was peeling in places, and the bathroom faucet dripped constantly. After the opulence I had grown up with, it should have felt like a tremendous downgrade. Instead, it felt like freedom. "It's not much," Amanda said apologetically as we carried the last box up the stairs. "But it's ours." "It's perfect," I replied, and I meant it. Reality set in quickly. Even with my partial scholarship and financial aid, tuition at RISD was expensive. To make ends meet, I took 3 part-time jobs: morning shifts at a coffee shop near campus, weekend hours at James's design studio, who had connected me with his friend in Providence, and evening work as a restaurant hostess. Between classes, homework, and work, I averaged about 5 hours of sleep per night. The first semester was brutal. There were nights I sat on the floor of our tiny bathroom crying from exhaustion, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. But then morning would come and I would drag myself to my design classes. And the moment I sat down in front of a project, something inside me would light up again. This was where I belonged. This was what I was meant to do. A pivotal moment came 2 months into the semester. One of my professors, Thomas Walker, kept me after class to discuss a project. "Lauren, your work shows exceptional promise," he said, studying my design mock-ups, "but there's something holding you back. You're playing it safe, technically perfect, but emotionally guarded." His words hit a nerve. I had spent my entire life being technically perfect while keeping my emotions carefully contained. "I want you to try again," he continued. "But this time, I want you to design as if no one will ever judge you for it, as if the only person you need to please is yourself." That night, I stayed in the computer lab until dawn, pouring everything I had been holding back into a new design. All the anger, the hurt, the betrayal, but also the hope and determination. When I presented it to Professor Walker the next day, his face broke into a wide smile. "Now that is authentic design," he said. "That is your voice, Lauren." Professor Walker became a mentor, recognizing something in me that even I hadn't fully acknowledged. He offered me a position in the university's design lab, which paid better than the coffee shop, and gave me valuable experience. For the first time, I felt seen for who I really was, not who someone else wanted me to be. Financial struggles remained a constant. There were weeks when I had to choose between textbooks and groceries. I became expert at stretching a packet of ramen into 2 meals, at finding free events that served food, at mending clothes instead of replacing them. Once I developed a terrible flu, but couldn't afford to see a doctor, relying instead on over-the-counter medicine and Amanda's nurturing care. During a particularly low moment, I tried to contact my parents. Perhaps I thought they had softened their stance. Perhaps they missed me even a fraction as much as I missed having a family. I called the home number only to find it had been disconnected. I emailed my father's work address. The message bounced back with an automated response stating he was no longer with the company. I even tried my mother's private clinic, only to be told by the receptionist that Dr. Patterson had relocated her practice and left no forwarding information. It was as if they had vanished, deliberately erasing any connection to me. I later learned through a former neighbor that they had sold the Boston house and moved to Chicago for a fresh start. They had not only cut me off financially, but had literally removed themselves from my life completely. The finality of that abandonment broke something in me that I didn't know could break. I had always held on to a tiny shred of hope that someday, somehow they would realize what they had done and try to make amends. Now that hope was gone. Amanda found me sitting on our fire escape that night, staring blankly at the city lights. "They're really gone," I told her, my voice hollow. "They didn't just kick me out, they erased me." She sat beside me, wrapping a blanket around both our shoulders. "Then they're the ones who lost something precious, not you." Despite everything, I threw myself into my studies with renewed determination. If my adoptive parents thought I would fail without them, I would prove them wrong. I would succeed not to spite them, but to vindicate myself. A significant opportunity came during my sophomore year, when I met James Cooper, the owner of a small but growing design firm in Providence. James had come to RISD as a guest lecturer, and afterward, I gathered my courage to show him my portfolio. "This is impressive work for a second-year student," he said, flipping through my designs. "You have a distinctive style, clean, but with emotional depth." 2 weeks later, he offered me an unpaid internship. It meant adding more hours to my already packed schedule, but the experience and connections would be invaluable. I accepted immediately. The internship was demanding. James had high standards and didn't soften his critiques because I was a student. But unlike my father's criticism, which was meant to diminish James's feedback, was designed to elevate, he pushed me because he saw my potential. "Your technical skills are strong," he told me after I completed my first real client project. "But what sets you apart is your intuitive understanding of how design affects people emotionally. That can't be taught." By the end of my sophomore year, I had established a routine that, while exhausting, was sustainable. My grades were excellent. My work at James's firm was earning positive feedback, and I had even managed to start a small emergency fund. The apartment still had peeling paint and a dripping faucet, but it had become home in a way the Boston mansion never was. The worst night came during finals week of my second year. I had been running on caffeine and determination for days, juggling exams, a major project for James, and my regular jobs. I had skipped meals to save time existing on protein bars and coffee. After turning in my last assignment, I dragged myself home intending to collapse into bed. Instead, I found myself sitting on the bathroom floor sobbing uncontrollably from a mixture of exhaustion, hunger, and bone-deep loneliness. In that moment, I felt utterly alone in the world. My parents had discarded me. I had no family, no safety net, no one who was obligated by blood or law to care whether I lived or died. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, pale, thin, with dark circles under my eyes. For a brief, terrifying moment, I wondered if it was all worth it. The struggle, the constant work, the never-ending worry about money. Then something shifted in my reflection. I saw beyond the exhaustion to the determination in my eyes. I saw a young woman who had been abandoned by those who should have loved her unconditionally, but who refused to be defined by that abandonment. I saw someone who, despite everything, was building something meaningful on her own terms. I stood up, splashed cold water on my face, and looked myself directly in the eyes. "You are not what they made you," I told my reflection. "You are what you choose to become, and you choose to never, ever give up." That night marked a turning point. I had hit bottom and found that even there at my lowest, there was something in me that refused to be broken. Something that insisted on rising, on creating, on becoming. The next morning, I woke up with a new resolve. I would not just survive, I would thrive. By 21, I had defied expectations, including my own, by graduating a year early. Through a combination of summer courses, credit overloading each semester, and independent study projects, I completed my degree program in 3 years instead of 4, graduating with highest honors. My thesis project, an integrated brand identity for a sustainable fashion startup, had been featured in a national design publication. The day I received my diploma, I searched the audience out of habit, knowing no one would be there for me. To my surprise, I spotted James, my internship mentor, sitting beside Professor Walker. After the ceremony, they both congratulated me warmly. "I have a proposition for you, Lauren," James said. "I need a full-time junior designer. The pay isn't great to start, but there's room for growth. What do you say?" I accepted on the spot. After years of juggling multiple jobs while studying, the idea of focusing solely on design work seemed like an unimaginable luxury, even at a modest starting salary. My career at Cooper Design began modestly. I handled small clients, revised existing designs, and did a lot of the work no one else wanted to do. But I approached every task with the same dedication, whether it was designing a logo for a major client or formatting business cards for a local plumber. James noticed and gradually entrusted me with more responsibility. 6 months into my full-time position, I was assigned to work on a rebranding project for a regional bank. The client had rejected 2 previous concepts from senior designers, finding them too conservative and unmemorable. James, perhaps as a test, asked me to try my hand at it. I spent a weekend immersed in the project, researching the bank's history and values, studying their customer demographics, analyzing competitors. Then I created something entirely different from what had been presented before, a warm, approachable identity system that conveyed stability and trustworthiness without feeling stodgy or corporate. When the client saw my designs, their response was immediate and enthusiastic. "This is exactly what we've been trying to articulate," the marketing director said. "It feels both established and fresh. Who developed this concept?" James proudly introduced me as the designer, and the look of surprise on the client's face when they realized such work had come from the youngest, newest member of the team was something I'll never forget. After that success, my career trajectory accelerated. I was assigned to bigger clients, given more creative control, and within a year promoted to senior designer with a substantial raise. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. I moved out of the shared apartment into my own small but charming one-bedroom. I bought a used car, nothing fancy, but reliable. I started building a savings account. It was during this period of professional growth that I met Michael Donovan. He was a brilliant software developer hired by one of our clients to collaborate on a digital product design. Tall with perpetually tousled dark hair and intelligent green eyes behind stylish glasses, he was as thoughtful as he was talented. Our first interaction was actually an argument over user interface design. I had created what I thought was an elegant, intuitive navigation system. Michael pointed out several technical flaws in my approach, not unkindly, but directly. Instead of becoming defensive, I was intrigued. Here was someone who cared as deeply about his craft as I did about mine. We began meeting for coffee to discuss the project, which evolved into dinners, which evolved into something more. Michael was unlike anyone I had dated before. He listened, really listened when I spoke. He respected my work and challenged me intellectually. And most importantly, he saw me, the real me, not some projection of who he wanted me to be. On our third date, I told him about my parents, about being adopted and abandoned. I had never shared the full story with anyone except Amanda. I was terrified that revealing such rejection would somehow make me seem less worthy of love. Michael's response surprised me. There was no pity in his eyes, only a quiet anger on my behalf and profound respect. "They missed out on knowing an extraordinary person," he said, taking my hand across the table. "That's their loss, not yours." As our relationship deepened, I discovered a newfound confidence in both my personal and professional life. I began specializing in user interface and user experience design, finding my technical skills and emotional intelligence perfectly suited to creating digital experiences that were both functional and engaging. This specialization led to my biggest professional challenge yet when Cooper Design was approached by TechVision, a prominent software company, to redesign their flagship product's interface. The project was complex, high profile, and had a tight deadline. James assigned me as the lead designer with a team of 3 juniors working under my direction. The responsibility was enormous. Our firm's reputation, my career trajectory, and a substantial contract all hinged on the success of this project. For the first time, I wasn't just responsible for my own work, but for guiding and managing others as well. As the project progressed, I encountered unexpected resistance from Sarah Winters, a recently hired design director who had joined the firm from a larger agency in New York. Sarah seemed determined to find fault with every decision I made, questioning my approach in front of clients, and undermining my authority with the junior designers. "The client specifically asked for innovation," she remarked during one particularly tense meeting. "But your designs seem rather safe, don't you think?" Her criticism echoed my father's dismissive tone so closely that I momentarily froze, that familiar feeling of inadequacy washing over me. But then I remembered Professor Walker's words from years ago: design, as if the only person you need to please is yourself. "The designs aren't safe, they're user-focused," I responded calmly. "Innovation that sacrifices usability isn't serving the client's actual needs. I'd be happy to walk you through the user testing data that supports this approach." Sarah backed down, but the tension remained. Later that week, Michael and I were having dinner at my apartment when I vented my frustrations about the situation. "Maybe this is a sign," he suggested, refilling my wine glass. "A sign of what? That you've outgrown Cooper Design." He leaned forward, eyes bright with excitement. "Lauren, you're brilliant at what you do. You understand both the aesthetic and functional sides of design in a way few people do. You shouldn't be fighting for recognition at this stage of your career." "What are you suggesting, that I look for another job?" "No," he grinned. "I'm suggesting you start your own firm." The idea was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. I had never considered entrepreneurship, partly because survival had been my primary focus for so long, and partly because I still carried the echo of my parents' voices telling me I wasn't enough. "That's a huge risk," I said, though the idea had immediately taken root in my imagination. "So is going to RISD against your parents' wishes," Michael pointed out. "So is graduating early. So is taking on the Tech Vision project. You've been taking calculated risks your whole life, Lauren, and they've paid off because you have both the talent and the determination to make them work." Before I could seriously consider such a dramatic step, the Tech Vision project came to a head. The deadline was approaching, and despite Sarah's interference, my team had created a streamlined, intuitive interface that maintained the product's core functionality while significantly improving the user experience. The client presentation was scheduled for a Monday morning. Sarah insisted on leading it despite James's original intention for me to do so. I swallowed my pride and focused on ensuring the presentation materials were flawless. What I didn't expect was for Sarah to present my team's work as primarily her own, minimizing my contribution to assistance with implementation details. I sat in stunned silence as she took credit for key conceptual breakthroughs that had been entirely my ideas. After the presentation, which the client received enthusiastically, James pulled me aside. "You look like you're about to explode," he said quietly. "Let's talk in my office." Once the door closed behind us, I couldn't contain my anger and disappointment. She took credit for my work, James, for all of it. She presented my concepts, my solutions, as if I had merely helped execute her vision. That's not just unprofessional, it's dishonest. James sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "I know, and I'm sorry I didn't step in. Politics in a growing firm can be complicated, Lauren." Politics. This isn't about politics. This is about integrity. Sarah has connections to clients we've been trying to land for years, her reputation in the industry. I held up a hand, suddenly understanding with perfect clarity. Is more valuable to the firm than the truth. I get it. That evening, I received a call from TechVision's product director. "Lauren, I just wanted to personally thank you for your work on this project. Despite what your colleague implied in the presentation, it was clear to me who was the creative force behind this redesign." His words were validating but bittersweet. I thanked him and hung up, then immediately called Michael. "You were right," I said without preamble. "It's time for me to start my own firm." The following week, I gave James my notice. He tried to convince me to stay, offering a promotion and raise, but my mind was made up. It was time to bet on myself completely and without reservation. "I'll always be grateful for the opportunities you've given me," I told him sincerely. "But I need to create something that truly reflects my values and vision." 2 months later, Patterson Design Studio officially opened for business. I had used my savings to lease a small office space, invest in necessary equipment, and build a professional website. Michael had helped with the technical aspects and had even become my first official collaborator, handling the development side of digital projects. I had chosen to use my adoptive parents' name for my business deliberately, not out of any lingering attachment or desire for reconciliation, but as a reclamation. Patterson would no longer represent rejection and conditional love in my story. I was redefining it as a symbol of independence, creativity, and authentic success. The beginning was modest. I started with a few small clients from my personal network, former classmates who had gone on to work at various companies and could throw some freelance work my way. The pay was minimal, the hours long, and the stress considerable. There were nights I lay awake wondering if I had made a catastrophic mistake. Then came the breakthrough. TechVision's product director contacted me directly about a new project, bypassing their usual agency selection process. "We want the real talent behind our interface redesign," he said, "not the person who presented it." That first major client gave Patterson Design Studio the portfolio piece and financial cushion needed to attract more substantial business. Within 6 months, we had grown enough to hire 2 junior designers. Within a year, we had moved to a larger office and established ourselves as specialists in digital product design. Life had taken me on a journey I could never have imagined, sitting in that mansion in Boston, trying desperately to please parents who saw me as an investment rather than a child. I had gone from abandoned and alone to building my own success, surrounded by people who valued me for exactly who I was. At 25, my professional life had taken on a momentum that sometimes amazed me. Patterson Design Studio had grown to a team of 8, with a reputation for creating digital experiences that were both beautiful and functional. Michael and I had officially merged our talents, with him heading the development side of the business while I led design. Our client list included startups and established companies alike, with projects ranging from mobile applications to complete digital ecosystems. We had won several industry awards and been featured in design publications. The little girl who had once been told her creative pursuits were worthless was now leading a thriving business built entirely around creativity. One morning, as I was having coffee and scanning business news, a headline caught my eye. "Patterson Financial Faces Bankruptcy Amid Investment Scandal." The article featured a photo of my father looking older and strained, leaving a courthouse. According to the piece, William Patterson had made a series of high-risk investments that had collapsed spectacularly, taking his clients' money and his own fortune with them. The firm was under investigation for potential fraud, though my father maintained all actions had been legal if ultimately misguided. My mother's name was mentioned as a co-defendant in several civil suits. I stared at the screen, a complex swirl of emotions rising within me. These people had cast me aside when I needed them most, had treated me as disposable when I didn't conform to their expectations. Part of me felt a vindictive satisfaction in their downfall. But another part, a part that surprised me, felt a twinge of sadness for the wreckage of lives their actions had caused, including their own. Michael found me still looking at the article an hour later. "Are you okay?" he asked, gently, setting a fresh cup of coffee beside me. "I think so," I replied. "It's just strange seeing them after all this time, even in a photo. They look diminished somehow. Do you want to reach out to them?" I considered the question carefully. "No, that chapter of my life is closed, but it does make me think about something else, something I've been avoiding." That something was my biological parents. For years, I had pushed aside any curiosity about my origins. The pain of rejection by my adoptive parents had made the prospect of exploring my biological roots seem too fraught, too potentially hurtful. But seeing William and Margaret's faces had stirred something in me, a desire to understand the full truth of where I came from. I hired a private investigator specializing in adoption cases. The process took months, complicated by sealed records and the passage of time. Finally, the investigator presented me with a file containing what she had discovered. My biological mother, Catherine Allen, had been a 19-year-old art student when she became pregnant. She had died in a car accident when I was 4, never having had the opportunity to reconnect with me. My biological father, John Reynolds, had not known about the pregnancy. Catherine had chosen not to tell him when they broke up shortly before she discovered she was expecting. He was a landscape painter living in Northern California, now in his 50s. The revelation that my biological father was an artist sent a shiver of recognition through me. Perhaps my creative talents weren't random after all, but a genetic inheritance I had received, despite my adoptive parents' attempts to suppress it. After much deliberation, I decided to contact John. I wrote a careful email introducing myself and explaining the situation, making it clear that I had no expectations or demands, only a desire for connection if he was open to it. His response came within hours, full of shock, joy, and regret. "I never knew," he wrote. "If I had everything, would have been different. Catherine and I parted on difficult terms, but I would have been there for both of you. The thought that I have a daughter that I've missed 25 years of your life is overwhelming, but if you're willing, I would very much like to meet you." 2 weeks later, I flew to California. John met me at a small cafe near his studio in Mendocino. He was tall and lanky, with graying hair pulled back in a ponytail, paint perpetually embedded under his fingernails. The moment I saw him, I recognized something familiar in the shape of his eyes, in the way he held himself. Our meeting was awkward at first, both of us navigating uncharted emotional territory. But as we talked, as I shared my story, and he shared his something remarkable happened, we recognized each other. Not just physically, but in our approaches to creativity, in our perspectives on the world, in the way we both used art to process our experiences. "I see so much of Catherine in you," he told me, voice thick with emotion. "Her determination, her clarity of vision. But you're your own person too, forged by experiences I can hardly imagine." When by the end of that first meeting, we had established a foundation for a relationship that, while it could never replace the years lost, offered something new and precious, a genuine connection based on mutual respect and shared DNA. As I immersed myself in discovering this new dimension of my identity, Patterson Design Studio continued to flourish. Our reputation for combining aesthetic excellence with functional innovation attracted increasingly prestigious clients. Michael and I expanded our services to include branding and marketing strategy hiring specialists to complement our core design and development expertise. We landed a game-changing contract with Nexus, one of the largest technology companies in the world. They wanted us to redesign the user experience for their entire product suite, a massive undertaking that would establish us as a major player in the industry. The project would require expanding our team and elevating our processes to a new level of sophistication. As we prepared our approach for the Nexus project, I received an unexpected email from Sarah Winters, my former colleague who had taken credit for my work at Cooper Design. "Lauren, I'm writing to congratulate you on your success. Your studio's growth has been remarkable. I'm currently between positions and wondered if you might consider bringing me on for the Nexus project. My experience with enterprise clients could be valuable to your team." The irony was almost too perfect. The woman who had dismissed my abilities and claimed my work as her own was now seeking employment from me. 3 years ago, I might have responded with righteous anger or smug satisfaction. Instead, I felt a strange sense of closure. I drafted a polite but firm reply. "Thank you for your interest, Sarah. While I appreciate your experience, I'm looking for team members who exemplify not just technical skill, but also integrity and collaborative spirit. I wish you the best in your job search." Michael laughed when I showed him the exchange. "Karma comes for everyone eventually," he said, wrapping his arms around me. "It's not even about karma," I replied. "It's about building something authentic. Every person on our team contributes not just their skills, but their character to what we're creating." As we worked on the Nexus project, Michael and I grew closer personally, as well as professionally. Our late nights at the office often turned into deep conversations about our dreams, fears, and hopes for the future. We had been dating for nearly 3 years, our relationship strengthening alongside our business partnership. During a rare weekend getaway to a coastal town in Maine, Michael proposed. It wasn't an elaborate production, just the two of us walking along a rocky beach at sunset, when he suddenly dropped to one knee, pulling a simple but elegant ring from his pocket. "Lauren Patterson," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "You are the most extraordinary person I've ever known. Your resilience, your creativity, your capacity for joy, despite everything you've endured, amazes me every day. Will you marry me?" The little girl who had once believed herself unworthy of love, who had been discarded by the people who should have cherished her, now stood before a man who saw her completely and loved her unconditionally. The answer was simple. "Yes," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Absolutely yes." As I slipped the ring onto my finger, I felt a sense of wholeness I had never experienced before. My journey from abandoned child to successful business owner to beloved partner had been arduous and often painful. But standing on that beach, I wouldn't have changed a single step. Every hardship had shaped me, every struggle had strengthened me, every moment of darkness had made me appreciate the light more fully. The Nexus project launched to widespread acclaim, cementing Patterson Design Studio's reputation as an industry leader. Our small team of 8 had grown to 20, and we had moved to a spacious office in a renovated industrial building in downtown Providence. Success by any conventional measure was mine. But the true measure of my success wasn't in the awards on our walls, or the impressive client list, or even the healthy balance in our business account. It was in the life I had built on my own terms, authentic to my values and talents. It was in the relationships I had formed with people who appreciated me for exactly who I was not, who they wanted me to be. John, my biological father, attended our wedding, proudly walking me down the aisle. Amanda, who had remained my closest friend through everything, was my maid of honor. The celebration was filled with people who had chosen to be part of my life, who had earned their places in my heart through genuine care and support. My adoptive parents were not invited, nor did I expect them to reach out. The chasm between us had grown too wide, too deep to bridge, but I no longer carried the weight of their rejection. I had found my own family, created my own home, forged my own path. And in doing so, I had discovered the most important truth of all, that sometimes the people who push you away are inadvertently setting you free to become who you were always meant to be. At 28, I found myself in a position I could never have imagined during those dark days when I had first left my parents' home. Patterson Design Studio had grown into Patterson Digital Partners, employing 35 people across design development and strategy divisions. Michael and I had purchased our first home, a beautiful Victorian with a garden and studio space where I could work on personal creative projects. We were expecting our first child, a girl, in just a few months. Professional success had brought financial security beyond what I had ever dreamed possible. Our firm now occupied the entire top floor of the renovated industrial building with views of the Providence skyline and river. Industry publications regularly featured our work, and I had been invited to speak at major design conferences. The little girl who had once been told her creative pursuits were worthless was now considered an authority in her field. One morning, as I was reviewing applications for our design internship program, my assistant informed me that a reporter from Design Innovators magazine wanted to interview me for a feature on self-made women in design. The irony of that phrase, self-made, wasn't lost on me. While I had certainly built my career through my own efforts, I recognized the many people who had supported, mentored, and believed in me along the way. Professor Walker, James, Michael John, and even Maria, whose early kindness had shown me what genuine care looked like. During the interview, the reporter asked about my journey from student to industry leader. I shared my story openly, including the rejection by my adoptive parents and the struggles of putting myself through school. I had long since stopped feeling shame about these aspects of my past. They were simply parts of the path that had led me to where I now stood. What would you say to young designers facing similar obstacles? The reporter asked. Trust your own vision, I replied. Listen to constructive feedback, certainly, but don't let others define your worth or dictate your path. And remember that rejection, even from those closest to you, isn't a reflection of your value, but often of their limitations. 2 weeks after the article was published, I received an email that stopped me cold. The subject line read simply, Lauren, it's your mother. My hand trembled as I opened it, unsure what to expect. The message was brief. Dear Lauren, I read about you in Design Innovators. Your father and I would like to meet with you if you're willing. There is much to discuss. Margaret Patterson. No apology. No acknowledgement of the years of silence. Just a terse request, as if we had been out of touch for weeks rather than a decade. I showed the email to Michael, who frowned as he read it. You don't owe them anything, he said, protective as always. What could they possibly have to discuss after all this time? I'm curious, I admitted. Not hopeful, but curious. After much deliberation, I agreed to meet them at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between Providence and Boston, where they were now living in a small apartment after losing their mansion. Michael insisted on accompanying me, though he agreed to give me privacy for the actual conversation. The day of the meeting, I dressed carefully in a simple but elegant maternity dress. My growing belly a visible reminder of the future I was creating, so different from the past they had tried to dictate. Michael drove periodically, squeezing my hand. As I stared silently out the window, memories flooding back with each mile. We arrived early, securing a quiet table in the corner. When my parents walked in, I almost didn't recognize them. My father, once imposing and immaculate, now looked shrunken, his expensive suits replaced by off-the-rack clothes that hung oddly on his frame. My mother, who had prided herself on her perpetually youthful appearance, had allowed her hair to gray, her face lined in ways her former self would have found unacceptable. They spotted me and approached hesitantly. My father extended his hand formally, as if greeting a business associate rather than his daughter. My mother attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Lauren, my father said, his voice less commanding than I remembered. Thank you for agreeing to meet us. You're pregnant, my mother observed, stating the obvious as they sat down across from me. When are you due? August, I replied instinctively, placing a protective hand on my belly. It's a girl. An awkward silence followed, filled with a decade of absence and unspoken words. Finally, my father cleared his throat. I suppose you're aware of our situation, he began. The firm's collapsed the lawsuits. It's been a difficult few years. I read about it, I acknowledged neutrally. We've had to start over in a manner of speaking, he continued. It's been a humbling experience. My mother jumped in, apparently unable to sustain the pretense of small talk. Lauren, we've seen how successful you've become. Your company, your work with those technology firms, it's all very impressive. Thank you, I said, though her words felt hollow coming a decade too late. The thing is, my father interjected, leaning forward, we find ourselves in a position we never anticipated. The legal fees have been substantial, and most of our assets were liquidated to settle with investors. I suddenly understood the true purpose of this reunion. It wasn't reconciliation they sought, but financial assistance. After all these years, after calling me a burden and cutting me off without a backward glance, they had come because they needed something from me. You want money? I stated flatly. My father had the grace to look momentarily embarrassed before his pragmatic nature reasserted itself. We prefer to think of it as family helping family. After all, despite our differences, we are still family. A bitter laugh escaped me before I could suppress it. Family, you made it very clear that we stopped being family the moment I chose my own path. You called me a burden. You cut me off completely. You moved without telling me and left no forwarding address. That's not what families do. We may have been hasty in our judgment. My mother offered her tone, suggesting this was as close to an apology as she could manage. We've had time to reflect on our actions. Reflection prompted by necessity, it seems, I observed. My father straightened in his chair, a flash of his old authority surfacing. Lauren, we provided for you for 18 years. We gave you every advantage, every opportunity. Except the one that mattered unconditional love, I countered. You gave me advantages as long as I complied with your vision for my life. The moment I showed independence, you discarded me. That's rather dramatic, my mother said dismissively. We simply expected you to make responsible choices. And I did, just not the choices you wanted. I took a deep breath, centering myself. Look, I didn't come here to rehash the past. What exactly are you proposing? My father outlined their situation with the clinical precision I remembered so well. They needed financial assistance to relocate to a retirement community in Florida, to settle remaining debts to establish a modest but comfortable life in their later years. The amount they sought was substantial, though well within my means now. In return, he concluded, we could reconcile, become a family again, meet our granddaughter when she arrives. I sat in silence, absorbing the surreal nature of the moment. Here were the people who had once held all the power in my life, who had wielded their financial advantage as a weapon to control me, now seeking my help. The symmetry was almost poetic. I have a counter-proposal, I finally said. I won't give you money directly, but I will offer you something more valuable opportunity, something you never gave me. They exchanged confused glances. Patterson Digital Partners has a foundation that provides scholarships to art and design students without financial support. We also have a program that helps older adults develop new skills for career transitions. I'm willing to create positions for both of you within these initiatives. Real work, not charity. You'd need to earn your place just as I had to earn mine. The shock on their faces was almost comical. They had clearly expected either an outright rejection or a blank check, not a conditional offer requiring effort on their part. You expect me to work for you? My father asked incredulously. At my age, after the career I've had, I expect you to contribute value if you want to receive value, I replied calmly. That's how the world works, as you once told me repeatedly. My mother studied me with newfound consideration. You're serious about this? Completely. Additionally, the foundation needs a name. I'm planning to call it the Maria Hernandez Foundation, after the woman who showed me genuine love when you couldn't. The first scholarship will be awarded next semester. The mention of Maria's name clearly caught them off guard. My father's face darkened momentarily, while my mother had the decency to look ashamed. We'll need to discuss this, my father said stiffly. Take all the time you need, I replied, gathering my purse and preparing to leave. My assistant will contact you next week to see what you've decided. And to be clear, this is the only offer I'm willing to make. Take it or leave it. As I stood, my mother reached out suddenly, her fingers brushing my arm. The baby. Will we be allowed to be grandparents to her regardless of our decision about the work? I looked into her eyes, searching for any genuine emotion beyond self-interest. What I saw was complex regret, mingled with pride, fear of continued isolation, and perhaps a small flicker of actual concern for the child I carried. That depends, I said honestly, not on whether you accept the job offer, but on whether you can learn to love without conditions. My daughter will never experience the kind of conditional acceptance I grew up with. She will be valued for who she is, not what she achieves or how well she conforms to expectations. If you can truly embrace that philosophy, then perhaps you can have a place in her life. But I will be watching very carefully. And at the first sign that you're treating her as you treated me, that door will close permanently. I left them sitting in stunned silence, walking out to where Michael waited in the car. As we drove away, I felt not the vindication I might once have imagined, but a quiet certainty that I had honored my own truth while offering a path forward that maintained my boundaries. A week later, my assistant informed me that my parents had declined the opportunity. I wasn't surprised. Their pride, even in reduced circumstances, wouldn't allow them to work under the authority of the daughter they had once dismissed. The door I had offered remained open, but they had chosen not to walk through it. Instead of dwelling on their decision, I channeled my energy into finalizing the Maria Hernandez Foundation. Through a private investigator, I located Maria herself, now living with her daughter's family in New Mexico. Our reunion was tearful and joyous, her warm embrace exactly as I remembered from childhood. Mi niña, she whispered, cupping my face just as she had done when I was small. Look at the wonderful woman you have become. I invited Maria to the foundation's launch event and arranged for her to move closer if she wished, offering her a position as honorary chairperson. Her wisdom and warmth would be invaluable to the young artists and designers receiving scholarships, many of whom came from challenging backgrounds similar to my own. As my due date approached, I found myself reflecting more deeply on the nature of family and belonging. In my office preparing to begin maternity leave, I looked around at what I had built, a thriving business that valued creativity and integrity, a team of talented individuals who respected and supported one another, a foundation that would help others find their path. And beyond the professional realm, I had created something even more precious, a genuine family, not one bound by obligation or expectation, but by choice and love. Michael, whose unwavering support had been my anchor. John, my biological father, who had embraced the opportunity to know me with open-hearted joy. Amanda, whose friendship had sustained me through my darkest moments. Maria, whose early kindness had shown me what love should feel like. And soon my daughter, who would enter a world where her worth was never in question, where her voice was valued, where her path was hers to choose. The journey from that painful night when my parents had called me a burden to this moment of fulfillment had been arduous, filled with struggles I wouldn't wish on anyone. Yet I couldn't bring myself to regret any of it. Each challenge had strengthened me. Each rejection had pushed me toward authentic connection. Each obstacle had revealed capacities within myself I might never have discovered in comfort. When our daughter was born in August, we named her Catherine Maria, honoring both my biological mother and the woman who had shown me real maternal love. Holding her in my arms, I made a silent promise. She would always know her value came from who she was, not what she achieved. She would be free to discover her own path with our support, rather than our direction. She would never question whether she was loved, never feel she had to earn her place in our hearts. In the end, the most profound success of my life wasn't the business I had built or the recognition I had earned. It wasn't even the financial security I had achieved against such odds. It was the simple truth that I had broken a cycle of conditional love, that I had transformed abandonment into strength, rejection into self-acceptance, loss into creation. The true measure of a person isn't found in the approval of others, even those who are supposed to love you unconditionally. It's in the courage to honor your authentic self, to build a life aligned with your values, to create connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Sometimes being called a burden and abandoned becomes the first step toward liberation. Sometimes being cut off from the familiar forces you to discover your true capabilities. Sometimes the people who should have loved you the most end up teaching you the most valuable lesson of all, that you are enough exactly as you are, regardless of anyone else's ability to see it. If you've ever felt abandoned by those who should have stood by you, remember that sometimes that empty space becomes the foundation on which you build something far more beautiful than what was lost. Success isn't just about proving them wrong. It's about discovering what's deeply right for you and having the courage to pursue it. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and transformation. Share in the comments if you've experienced similar challenges or how you've turned rejection into strength. Remember, sometimes the people who push you down are unknowingly giving you the momentum to rise higher than they could ever imagine.